Hi, my name is Alex Williams. I'm the head of animation at Escape Studios, and I've been asked to talk a little bit about the future of the creative industries. So I guess the first thing to say about the future of the creative industries is that despite having worked on something like 30 or 40 animated feature films and been teaching animation for 30 years, I have no crystal ball and I cannot see the future. But what I think I can do is look to some of the current trends, in particular things that I'm seeing are working for my students, and talk about how those are likely to extrapolate at least in the near future. Despite all the uncertainty that's been going on of late. So the first thing I want to do is show you a book. So this is a piece of old school creative industry. A book is published by one of my students, Evgenia Golubeva, who took the short course in animation at Escape Studios a few years ago and has published I Am Not a Mouse. And I think what's really interesting about this book, apart from the fact that it's a really, really good book and it's really, really well done, and she's a very talented illustrator, is that this is just one part of a kind of, if you like, a sort of multimedia approach that Evgenia has taken to animation. So she took our short course in animation, learning 3D animation. So we teach in a piece of software called Maya, and it's 3D animation as in the kind of Toy Story kind of animation. And she never actually ended up doing that particular kind of animation. But what she did do was a lot of 2D animation, more the kind of the flat, traditional illustrative style, which is what she's working in here. And one of the things she did with this was to start making short films. So she left Escape Studios and she made a bunch of short films with herself and some of her friends, working on very, very low budgets. Because she's Russian, I think she managed to get a little bit of finance from the Russian Culture Ministry. But basically it was a lot of elbow grease and hard work on her part. And she made a number of short films, of which the most recent is I'm Not a Mouse. And she also, Evgenia, cracked the business of entering those films into film festivals through an online website called Film Freeway, a skill which she's now taught to me, so that I've been able to apply that to the students at Escape Studios, of which more later. But she won a bunch of awards, has done very well in festivals, and off the back of that success managed to get a publishing deal. And I think what's impressive about this is that although, book publishing is old media, Evgenia's approach is a very, very new media approach. And she's also a writer at Disney. She's managed to parlay her filmmaking skills into writing. And I guess she has, in a way, what you might call a kind of portfolio career. And I would say that if we're looking into the future of the creative industries, peering into our crystal ball and trying to look to see what's going to happen in the future, I would say that the effect of COVID-19 has been to accelerate many of the changes that were happening over the last decade or so. And the most obvious of those changes has been the transition away from the sort of traditional lifetime job approach towards a much more fluid, if you like, freelance / gig economy / working from home / doing lots of different kinds of jobs type of job. And that's just more the case now than ever. And especially with the lockdown, as I record this, we're supposedly emerging from a lockdown, but it actually appears we're transitioning into another lockdown. We're seeing really the end of the traditional working environment where people show up to work in a particular place and do what they're told for 8 hours a day and then go home. And we're now seeing a very different kind of working environment. And unless things go back to the way they were, which seems to me at this point to be unlikely, we're going to see a new environment in which people like Evgenia are going to flourish. So she's got a publishing deal. She's making short films. She's working as a writer for Disney. She's also working as a writer for Blue Zoo Animation. Both of those companies are based in London. Does Evgenia go into London to visit them? No, she works from home. Where does she live? She lives in Stratford-upon-Avon. And that, it seems to me, is likely to be, for many of our students, and in particular our successful students, a model for the future. Another model for the future that I'm seeing is another student called Charlotte Gimbert, and I'll show you some of her stuff in a little bit. And she has created an entirely new business model for animation, one that I, until recently, have literally never seen before. And she started this at age 15. And she began making Minecraft animations at YouTube. Initially just as a kind of fan thing to do, just for fun, just mucking around on YouTube. But as she started to grow in followers, grow in views, she began to do it professionally. And when I say professionally, what I mean by that is that she has monetized her channel. She has over 80,000 subscribers, and she gets tens of thousands hits tens of thousands of hits every month, and successfully monetizes that into an income which pays her more than she would be making if she was working in, say, retail or working as a barista or something like that. Her channel is called QC Animations. It's remarkably successful. She's almost embarrassed to talk about how successful it is. And she started this when she was 15 years old. Again, this is another new economy type of job. She's still at Escape Studios. She's in her second year of animation studies, and she's still talking about graduating from Escape Studios and getting a job. But what I think, she's coming to realize is that she probably won't ever need to do that, because she is in effect building her own studio from home, a kind of animation studio which requires no working capital, no premises, no overheads. The only cost is her own time and the talents and hard labor of the friends that she works with to put her videos together. She receives income from YouTube based on the number of hits they get, which is in turn based on the amount of advertising revenue they can raise, and this revenue is then shared with her friends. So I think these are two really good examples of two students who are making the new economy work for them. That isn't to say that the old economy won't continue. I, for example, have a cartoon strip in the Times. It's called Queen's Counsel. It's been running for 27 years, and that is still old economy stuff. That still works. They still pay me every month for the cartoon strip that I do in the newspaper. But that is old school stuff. And the new school stuff that my students are doing is, it seems to me, increasingly more the kind of vision for the future that I can offer to my students. So I think even though we can't necessarily see into the future, I think we can see where the current trends are leading us. And what we can see as well is that Corona has accelerated these changes. And even as the government's lockdowns have accelerated the destruction of the high street in favor of online retailers like Amazon, so the lockdowns are accelerating the end of the kind of traditional paid job economy and the transition to the kind of new economy, working from home and being flexible, portfolio, career type of economy. Now, who's going to win in these circumstances? I would say that the winners are going to be the students who have a lot of get up and go. And of course, this has always been the case, right? So people who have a lot of drive, have a lot of determination, prepared to try new things, prepared to learn new software, these are the kind of people who are going to succeed. And that has always been the case. And anyone who teaches knows you can identify the student in the front row. And in actual fact, going back to Evgenia, she was the person in the front row, right? I can remember looking at her on day one. She had a kind of rapt attention to her. She wanted to learn everything. She was constantly asking for feedback. You could tell right away that she was going to succeed. So drive, determination, and a willingness to adopt new business models and to try new things, I think that's the way of the future in the creative industries. So I'm going to stop this video now, and I'm going to show you some stuff at the animation blog and at YouTube. Which was created by one of my animation students, Charlotte Gimbird. Now bear in mind that Charlotte created this when she was 15 years old. You can see here that she's got 81,000 subscribers. And if you look at one of her videos, you can see that, if I just take the volume down here, they're relatively short, 5 minutes long. It's animation based on Minecraft, but the level of animation here is very sophisticated and remarkably so for someone so young. But the key point is that this is something that grew out of her own enthusiasm for Minecraft, for video games, and her own kind of determination to get this going. So if we just, we can get to the point where I can show you that, yeah. So there you go. So 31,000 likes and 1.5 million views. So this is really, I think, a remarkable example of the kind of opportunities that are opening up in new media and how our students are taking advantage of them. We go to my animation blog and just check in at the success stories button, which is here. I can show you some of the people who are finding work now in the industry. Here's Eduardo Sartori. Again, Eduardo has been doing short films at Escape Studios, and he managed to, he won some awards with Quarantine Chorus,
and has managed to leverage that into a job, a kind of job slash internship at a new animation startup, Eyalin Animation. So if I look through this, we're going to find similarities with old media success. Sophia is the layout artist at Jellyfish Pictures. That's a studio that has offices in Soho and also in Brixton. But of course, they are now working entirely remotely, having put all of their staff into remote working from home. Emily Lim Sorias, she was working in Montreal. She's now again working online, working remotely. Pedro Cavalera is working in the games industry, which, as I'm sure you know, has been expanding at a far greater rate than the sort of traditional film and animation TV industry. So games continues to be one of the big growth areas, and we're seeing more and more of our students, and animation students, go into the games industry. Harry Pearson joining the Third Floor. The Third Floor is a studio that specializes in what we call pre-visualization, which is essentially replacing the cinematographer's job now on a movie. So previs is a kind of digital storyboarding process where the previs artists work very, very closely with the director to do a whole lot of upfront asset creation and very, very rapid animation, very, very kind of low budget, low poly, in order to help the director get what the director wants to be his or her vision for the movie. So this is a rapidly expanding area of the industry. Don Brodowska working at a advertising company. Advertising, of course, a big and growing part of the industry, has always been very strong, and presumably will continue to be strong, because brands brands are always going to have money to pay for stuff. So if you're working in the advertising industry, you're going to be working with proper budgets, with people who really want the very best for their product and their brand. Here's a licensing deal that we secured with Alaska Airlines from one of our short films, Flame. Of course, Alaskan Airlines isn't really flying very much these days. They aren't a big brand in the UK, but Alaskan is a very big brand in the US. So this is quite a serious thing that we managed to get through our film festival entries. Amanda Costa also at Jellyfish. Elena Scala at Climax, which is a games company. Again, games is a recurring theme. Laura Knight also at Jellyfish. Daniel Baidu working remotely. Daniel is a really interesting character because he was already doing freelance jobs in his first year at Escape Studios when he joined us as an undergraduate. I was able to help him get an internship with a small animation company called King Bee, based up in Elstree. And he did an unpaid internship for a bit, wasn't afraid to work for free in order to get his feet under the table, get his foot in the door, and quite soon after that they started to pay him, and he's managed to leverage that into a successful career. So it's interesting, I think the future, here's Evgenia, who I mentioned earlier on when I was doing my bit to camera. Evgenia, as we've discussed, has done her film I think her first one was called I Want to Live in the Zoo. There's another one called The Witch and the Baby, and then the one that I just showed you, which was turned into a book. So all kinds of stuff going on here. I think the message is a mixture of the old and the new. There are still, of course, traditional pathways into traditional jobs, but I think the vision of people working from home, finding new media ways to exploit their talents, not giving up, and looking for multiple opportunities into the market, like Evgenia, where you're doing short films, you're doing books, you're writing, you're directing, you're doing all kinds of different things. And this, I think, is very much the kind of model for the future that we are increasingly looking at Escape Studios.